Hi, Shirley. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm good,
Good
thanks
afternoon.
for asking.
Yes.
How are you? Are you
Yeah,
okay?
pretty well. Yes, pretty well. So sorry for the delay. It's just I don't know what happened with the Zoom platform. You were not able to enter, right? Shirley, you were not able to enter, right? This last minutes. I mean, were you able? I mean, because right now when you sent the message, I had to leave the room and I re-enter, and I think that you got. But were you able to enter? You had some problems?
Sorry, I can have a problem with my connection, but now that's okay. I
Oh
can
yes.
listen now. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. There we are. Okay, so I was saying that yes, don't worry about the times. Anyways, we are going to be sorry, we are going to be compensating. So as I was saying, yes, pretty well, surely, in Santa Cruz, very ironically, although spring has started last week, it is raining every single day. Very weird, right? Because in the spring it's like the sunny weather starts and stuff like that, and the flowers, everything that the normal fantasy of the spring. But nonetheless, right now it's raining every single day, and that is a little bit annoying because it was supposed to, well, rain. The rain season is supposed to be in July, in June, right? But then we are having it right now, which is of course annoying because nobody likes rain, right? It's like doesn't allow you to go to places here in Santa Cruz. The sewerage is horrible. Buses are full of people, everything. So everything is a craziness. So I don't like that part, let's say. But with regards to the rest, is fine.
Oh, great. Well, the weather is terrible now
Yes, and actually,
in Santa Cruz. Yeah.
the only day when it was good, uh, um, happily, it was the Saturday when it was the Santa Cruz anniversary. It was the only time when the weather was fine and good because a lot of people, I don't know if you knew this, but on the exact same day of our city's anniversary, there was a very famous concert here in Santa Cruz. I don't know if you listen about it. Daddy Yankee was
Yeah, I
presenting
know, I know.
his show, yes, in Santa Cruz. So everybody wanted to go to that concert. I didn't go. I don't particularly like Daddy Yankee. I mean, I like reggaeton, but not that the Yankees one. I am more of this new generation who did not listen very much to the Yankee. So I guess like people who were in that concert were more of 30 or something like that, right? Because that Yankee was very famous in the 2000s, in the 2005, something like that. So I didn't go, and of course because I don't like to go to places where there is so much people, like 40,000 people in the stadium. It was a craziness. So, but the weather was fine, and people apparently enjoy the concert because a lot of friends of mine went, and they had very positive commentaries about the concert. Did you like Daddy Yankee, by the way?
Yeah, I like the music, but I think that's his emotion for this is the first concert in a stadium probably in 2 3 years. Like
Yes.
that this is new experience this year.
Mhm. Yes, it's true. Well, I mean, there was a concert some months ago. Christian Nadal, you know him, this singer that I think used to sing rancheras,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
now he sings like rap as well. He was also here presenting his show. But I guess, yes, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess Daddy
but
Yankee is more famous, right?
yeah, this is more
Mhm.
famous. They are this stadium that we Aguilera compared with the arena. Oh, what's the name? Another stadium? I don't remember.
Real Santa Cruz,
Oh,
yes, stadium.
Real Santa Cruz. Yeah, that's okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, you're
this
right.
is so good
Yes,
compared
yes,
with the Wishi. Yeah, that's amazing.
yes, exactly. You're right. I think in the Real Santa Cruz Stadium, you just have the capacity to hold, I don't know, 2,000, excuse me, 20,000 people. But in the Tawiche Guerrera, you have the capacity to double that cipher, right? You have, I think,
Mhm.
the opportunity to get like 40,000 people because that was the number that people were talking about on Facebook. That Yankee basically filled the stadium with 40,000 people. So yeah, certainly it was a very, very huge concert. But yeah, I mean, and from that day on, the weather started to detriment. I mean, like it was very detrimental from their own,
Mhm.
because as I say, it's begun to be rainy, and apparently that situation is not going to change until next weekend, because as far as I saw in the climate report, we're gonna have rains until Thursday, and then on Friday, continuing until this weekend, we're gonna start again with the good temperatures. And I hope that that happens, because I don't want to be in the rainy season. I don't like rain particularly, because you cannot wear your clothes. Normally, you always have to wear a jacket. And
Yeah.
normally my jackets are ugly, so I don't like to wear it. I prefer to wear normal clothes.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Okay.
I don't like to, yes, I don't like to wear my jackets. But what about you? Did you enjoy your trip this weekend?
Yeah, I changed my planning really because but I traveled back no Washington DC, but I went to the Sandy Point State Park. This is a park for they had the beach. And
Yes.
this is where my friend fishing and me another friend is swimming. Yeah, this is a different activity for
Yeah.
Saturday. Yeah, I went Saturday. Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
this part. This is probably 1 hour. They're here. Yeah, this is in Maryland, but another little city. This is just
Mm-hmm.
great. The weather The weather, this is a little cold for fall. The shade
Mm-hmm.
that is not totally for sunny, but this is well.
Yes. And what about Sunday?
A Sunday, the Sunday that's totally different because I went another part, but that is the here in the city. Probably I
Mm-hmm.
had since 9 block my home. But this is similar, not similar, probably the same side for the Parque Urbano.
Mm-hmm.
Here, this is Patterson Park. Yeah, my friend went for running. Yeah, I am the last runner in that day, in Sunday. Yeah,
There was a running competition
not
when you
really.
when
We
you went.
only for the
Okay, but it
yeah.
was like I don't know, people were competing against each other, or it was something just with your friends, like let's see who
Yeah.
who arrives first to the line. How was it?
No, only for friend. They are 1, 2 friends. They are training for competition in realidad, in really, because they
Okay.
had the probably the next month. I had the this is not, I don't know this is say name como marathon.
Yes,
Yeah,
marathon.
marathon. Yeah, okay. They had, but me no.
Yes. So you competed against very
No.
much trained athletes. It was of course it was not fair, right? Because if they are athletes who are practicing for an actual competition, of course
Yeah,
you wouldn't win. But anyways,
you need more resistance
did you finish
everything.
the route? Did you finish the route at least?
Not really. No.
You didn't? I don't know. Anyways,
Very,
so it was
I
just
find we probably I find room for 1 or 2 kilometer, but no,
uh-huh.
this career is for 5 kilometer, so
Oh,
that's
5.
impossible for me. Probably I
Oh
work
yes.
only.
Oh yes. No, yes. I mean, 1 kilometer would be the maximum for me as well. I remember that when I was in high school, I also went to a 2 kilometers competition. It was a career. And of course I didn't arrive in the first place because I was a little bit fat. So anyways, but 2 kilometers is a lot of distance. Of course, I mean, it must be super exhausting, right? And these people who practice and practice and practice a lot for those competitions, they are for me very much respectful. I mean, I am very much respectful, and they should be respected for that, because it's a lot of sacrifice, right? To practice and practice every single day. And on that day as well, I guess they are also tired, and they have to compete against other people who have practiced. Difficult, right? And is that competition, let's say, a tournament for money? I mean, are they competing for money, or is it just something for charity, let's say, because there are a lot of races that are for charity, and some of them are for classifying to national competitions. What is that competition for?
Exactly what is the prime of the world, and I think that is like a festival for the city. So
Okay.
no, only for the probably the anniversary for the city. I don't know.
Mhm,
But I don't know what is the award.
mhm. Probably it's more for the honor then, right? Of
Yeah.
winning the competition of it is a state competition like Maryland's competition, or it's just for a city
I didn't see it for Baltimore.
for Baltimore. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds fine for Baltimore. Anyways, it's a huge city. I guess they're gonna receive a good price, at least something like a full paid dinner, I don't know, in a fine restaurant, I guess, right? Or something like that. I cannot think of other price, or maybe I don't know, maybe they classify to another national competition or to the states, right? Because as far as I know, that is the way that works in the US. First of all, they go for their cities, right? Later they go for their how's this called? Um, for their counts, los condados, and then they move on to the
Yeah.
states, yes, to the state competition. They move on to the national competition at the end, right? That is the way it works, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that probably that is similar here.
Yes, it's actually similar as well in Santa Cruz, right? Because as we have this semi-federalist model, excuse me, of municipalities, it also works that way, right? First of all, you go to your district, then you move on to your how's this called? To this to the municipality, then you go to the provinces, then you go to the departments, and then you go to the nationals, right? That's the way it works as well here. And
Yeah.
then of course, then you represent Bolivia, right? Other countries. But great. And could I ask, of course, if I am permitted to, why did you go to Washington D.C.?
Yeah, I share my plan, but probably I don't know when I can travel again.
But what was it that you didn't travel to Washington D.C.? I mean, if I can ask, right? I mean, with all respect, why didn't you go? Like maybe you had some troubles with your car. What happened?
No, this activity is more easy for me because my friend they hack car, so
Hmm.
I can go for this part in Saturday. So that's easy. Probably in Washington DC, I need to take a train for one hour 30 minutes, and that's
Yes.
different. Yeah,
Yeah, of course. Of course,
less
yeah. So
less
it was that
expensive.
they. Oh yes, more expensive. So they didn't go to Washington D.C. Maybe that was it, right? That you thought they would be going to Washington D.C., but they changed their plans, so you also changed yours with them, right? Because they are the ones who have the car. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fine, fine. I guess they were maybe thinking the same than you, right? It would be less expensive to stay here at the state and to go to some attraction or touristic place instead of going to another state, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's well. I think that's well. That's my last weekend because I knew the new place, so that's a different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. And actually, Washington D.C. is not a state as such, right? It's
Yeah.
the house of the country, right? It's the house of the state because it's like it's not in a state, but nonetheless, it is, as I said, like the capital. But it shouldn't be named the capital. I read this recently. Um, yes, I think it should be the house of the government. That is the correct term because when you read the Federalist Papers, this these documents that the first writers of the Constitution in America wrote when defending the Federalist Constitution, they said that Washington D.C. shouldn't be a state, but it should be merely the house of the government. That is to say, of the federal government. But it should be administered by the federal government instead of an state. It's a very interesting word, that one. I have stopped reading it, but I guess I'm gonna continue. Fantastic. So finally, what happened with your laboratory today? It was fine?
Yeah, that's fun. I, I was working in cell culture or in parasitic cultures. And I learning that.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Yes. I mean, that sounds very good. It's this thing that you do with a little tube, with a circular vessel. Is that what you do? Right? With a little circular vessel, and then you insert in that vessel the parasite, or how does that work?
No, this is like a play. This is like I don't know. Es como un frasco
Mm. Yeah.
en lo vertical. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. A vertical vessel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's different way. Do you refer for the circle that is used when you cultivate bacteria?
Oh,
Yeah,
bacteria.
you
Oh,
use
yes,
in
yes,
the,
yes,
but
yes.
in
You're right.
this case it's cell, so that is different.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much for illustrating me. Yes, yeah, I think you're right. Because
Yeah.
parasites are larger, right? Right or
The
not?
person, yeah, probably do you need to go play again. Depend the
Hmm.
request for the parasite because yeah, they are some one I need a cell or only for the medium. That's different.
Hmm. Fantastic. Well, incredible. For me, it sounds good. Sounds very scientific. Very good.
Yeah, yeah,
So, mhm. But so
that's
you're
good.
working very well. What about your paper? You told me, right, some weeks ago about your paper. Are
Yeah,
you advancing forward, or what happened with your paper?
yeah. I need to change in different table, and I need a new graphic for that because I that's probably that my paper this is okay. This do you have a table to layer? So this is like probably boring in this moment when you read, but my
Yes.
mentor say that oh, do you need graphic? Probably this is more good visible. Probably.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, so I can change that. So the table to graphic.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Actually, very good. Very good that you mentioned that. If I mean, because sometimes when you write essays, something that you have to do, of course, apart from presenting very good information and data, is to make it interesting, right, to the reader.
Yeah.
Because of course, without the readers, the paper doesn't work, right? Because you need to, of course, afford the price of the publication and stuff like that. If people do not read it, it's very difficult to see, right? How is this going to be successful? But incredible that you mentioned that, because in today's class, we are going to be discussing that. That is to say, how to write essays. And although we are not going to start with independent one, but we're going to be learning the first task of the writing section, that is an integrated essay. What we are going to be doing is, anyways, to have some few concepts about the essays, and I hope that you can actually apply them to your own essay when you continue writing it. That is to say, this essay that you're going to present as a paper, as a publication, right, as a scientific article. So fantastic, fantastic that you mentioned that. Okay, so by the way, I wanted to ask, did you have time to review the last document that I sent you last time, or maybe you were a little bit busy? I would understand if you were busy, but did you see this?
Yeah, I read very fast.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anyways, don't worry. So today we're gonna be learning how to write this essay. Okay. So remember that I told you, right? In the I'm gonna open it. In the template document, you have two different writings. First of all, you have the template itself, like the structure without being authored. And then you have, as you can see here, mm, let me see, let me see, let me see. Where is it? Here. And then you have this one. Here you have it. The reading extract with up with, nonetheless, lecture is set, etc. So this is the template, okay, dear Shirley, and this is, as I told you, the second writing that is an example of the template. So now let us read and listen, because if you remember, last time we discussed what the writing section first task would be about, and we saw that the first task of the writing section is basically an essay that contains a summary of two different information sources, right? A reading passage and also a lecture on the same topic. And we also saw last class that these topics or these information sources always contradict each other, which is what makes our essay very interesting, because in this case, we have to summarize both topics, but always making sure that our summary expresses very much that contradiction and opposition that exists between these two different information sources. So what I'm going to do right now is to let you read and listen the reading and also the lecture corresponding this particular essay, because I told you, right? I wrote this essay exemplifying the template, but nevertheless, you didn't read nor listen to the materials that I wrote this essay for. So let me right now give you the chance to read the reading passage about Claudius and also listen to the lecture so that we can later discuss the template. And I think that through this illustration, you're going to be able to catch it and to, of course, to comprehend the structure and the essence of this essay, okay? So let me right now open here it is. There it is. There you are. Custom practice. And now speaking, listening, writing. Integrated essay, answering an answer, quiz one. So let me go. Let us look for that passage. Must be over here. It's not this one. Let's go to the other one. Let's see if this is new reading passage. Okay, this is it. Fantastic. So I'm going to paste this reading passage usually to our personal chat box on WhatsApp, okay? Because here, the one that we have in Zoom does not support, does not tolerate the reading passage because it's too long. So please make sure to read this. I'm going to give you, as you know, 3 minutes for you to read this reading passage. That is the maximum time you have. If you finish reading before, as I told you, my recommendation would be get a piece of paper near you and write down what your summary of this reading passage would be, more or less, okay? Not necessarily, of course, very good, but try to write down a summary of how would you write down your particular description of this reading passage. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, okay? And start reading, please. A second. Start reading now. I'm going to come back in a second, okay? Please read. Okay, there you are, dear Shirley. Your 3 minutes are over. So now let us now move on to the lecture on the same topic. Okay. So notice, please, that as you have now read the reading section, you're going to be able to see that this lecture is going to contradict, okay, the reading passage, and that is very important. Okay, so please remember, take notes on this particular lecture. It's very important for you to take notes, okay, because later you are going to need, all right, to remember the different arguments and details presented in this lecture, and you're not going to be listening to it twice, but just once, okay? So very, very important to have your notes well written, okay? So please listen to it. And by the way, you have to take your notes while you listen, because there's no like a particular time for you to take notes and then to listen, but you need to take notes while you are listening, okay? That is how it works. Fantastic. So let us go and listen to this lecture on the same topic.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
The Emperor Claudius is a fascinating figure. He was traditionally portrayed as a vicious fool in ancient history books. But some sources, like the novel I, Claudius, which is a great book by the way, some sources portray him as one of the strongest Roman emperors. I want to interrogate that idea today. He certainly did a lot of good for the empire, but perhaps the traditional account of Claudius's reign, emphasizing the weakness of the emperor as a leader, is closer to the historical truth than the popular new revisionist account. Was he really as innovative, fair, and wise as the textbook suggests? Claudius definitely did some good things in his reign, like build new aqueducts and a port for Rome. But the biggest innovation of his reign, his coming to power by paying off the army after the assassination of the previous emperor, well, that would prove to be a dangerous precedent for the Roman Empire. It was a terrible precedent, in fact, and later, people doing the same things as Claudius would plunge Rome into civil war. As for Claudius's fairness, he might have created laws supporting the rights of slaves and expanding Roman citizenship. But, he was a notoriously bad judge, who was accused of making legal decisions without even listening to both sides of the case. He loved violent gladiatorial games, and had thousands of men executed simply for the amusement of the Roman people. He even conquered Britain to win prestige, destroying its indigenous peoples. So I wouldn't exactly call this very fair behavior. The text also mentions his wisdom, but, well, it's true that Claudius favored people like slaves and former slaves, but they were notorious for being corrupt. Many of them amassed giant personal fortunes at the expense of the Roman people, and were subject to bribery. His wives were also famous for being murderous and disloyal. In fact, his last wife poisoned him with a mushroom, and her son would go on to become the Emperor Nero, who was one of the worst rulers of world history. Claudius deserves at least some blame for the disasters of his reign, since someone as irresponsible as Nero should have never been made his heir. I mean, it wasn't very wise to choose him for a successor, was it?
Summarize the points made in the lecture you just heard, explaining how they cast doubt on points made in the reading passage.
There you are. Fantastic. So now we have read and listened to the materials or information sources that I mentioned to you. By the way, this is always going to be the same scenario, okay? First the reading passage and then the lecture on the same topic. As I told you, always they are going to be contradicting each other, and that is very important for you to notice, because in the summary, as we are going to see right now, you need to express that contradiction that exists between them, all right? So let us move on then to the structure. So as you can see here now, the structure is basically, as I told you, a summary, okay, of both materials. It says the reading extract leads off with, and you continue, right? Nonetheless, in the lecture, it is said that. So as I told you there, Shirley, everything you're going to do in this essay is to summarize, okay? You're going to be summarizing both materials. And the way you're going to do this is by, as I told you, contrasting the information. You know what is contrast, right? Contrastar is to basically express the difference that exists between two different things, all right? So you're always going to be contrasting the information, okay? You're going to contrast what the reading passage says with what the listening passage says. So for example, as you can see, it says the reading extract leads us with. And this phrase, look at it, I'm going to repeat it here in my essay. So these phrases, all of these phrases, as you can see, that are highlighted with yellow, these phrases are here because you need to always include them in your essay. They are basically, as I say, the structure So before you, excuse me, after you insert these particular phrases, the only thing you're going to do is to fill, llenar or rellenar, the rest of the information with, of course, the topic that you have received in your particular task. Of course, because the topic of our task, that is to say of this essay, is always going to vary. In your exam, you're not going to receive any of the topics that we are going to discuss in these practices, but you're going to receive a completely new and innovative topic. So what you have to do is simply to change the information, but the structure, by the way, is all these sentences that we have here highlighted with yellow and that are here mentioned in this particular template. You are never going to change it. The only thing that is going to change, as I say, is how you feel the blank spaces after the phrases that I'm giving you. So for example, this phrase, the reading extract leads off with, by the way, the word extract simply means passage, okay? It's another word to say passage. And that is something that I wanted to clarify there, Shirley. In this type of essay, always try to include words that are uncommon in English, okay? If you can use difficult, complex, eccentric, fancy words instead of the traditional common ones that we normally use in our daily speaking, try to use them, okay? Because when you use uncommon words in writing, it means that you're somebody who reads very much, and especially because American literature is very complex and it has a very, very, let's say, a specialized background. The reviewer appreciates very much when you use a complex vocabulary. So whenever you can, for example, here, we could have said the reading passage, right? But instead of reading, excuse me, of saying passage, we saw extract, or we used extract. So as I say, always try to replace these words that are common with complex words, like this one, for example, the reading extract leads off with, and you continue, okay? So for example, look at how I apply it. The reading extract leads off with, and here, as I say, I have to fill, tengo que rellenar what? I have to fill my essay with the information that I received, right? So if I am saying the reading extract leads off with, and here I have to, of course, continue with what the reading passage said about Claudius. If you pay attention to the reading always spoke positively about Claudius the emperor. So of course, if the reading passage spoke about the Emperor Claudius in a very positive manner, what am I going to do? I'm going to summarize that. Remember, you don't have to include your opinion in this case, dear Shirley. The only thing you do is to do what? You always summarize, okay? Resumir. You never include anything external. If you knew something about Claudius, don't mention it. If you believe this is not correct, don't mention it. If you disagree with the reading passage, don't mention it. Simply limit yourself to summarize, okay? Summarize. So the reading extra leads off with the idea that Claudius was not a terrible emperor for the Roman Empire, and he contributed with illustrious works for his people. As you can see, this is my summary of what the reading passage said. And that is exactly what you have to do every single time. The introduction is a super, super short summary of what was the main idea of the reading passage, contrasted with what the listening passage said. As I say, in this sentence, the reading extra leads off with the idea that Claudius was not a terrible emperor for the Roman Empire, and he contributed with illustrious work for his people. It's a very, very concise summary of everything that the reading passage said, right? Because although the reading passage gave a lot of reasons for arguing that Claudius was not a bad emperor, if I summarize it in a very, very general manner, what did the reading passage say there, Shirley? Well, it said that Claudius was a good emperor, right? And he contributed with illustrious work for his people. For example, notice this word illustrious is a complex word, right? And although I could have used, for example, with great or with good or with fantastic words for his people, instead of using those words, I use illustrious. And this is what I tell you. Try to use words that are not very common in English. If you can memorize some of them, or if you can improve your vocabulary by reading a little bit more, maybe, it will be fantastic, okay? Try to, as I say, include complex words, words that are not common, fancy words, okay? So, as I say, it's a very, very concise summary of the reading passage, okay? And here, look at the template, it says, nonetheless. You remember that we talked about this. This is a connector of opposition, right? Because we are saying sin embargo, no? Nonetheless, nevertheless means sin embargo. However, sin embargo. So, and why are we using this connector? You may be wondering. We are using it because if you remind, we talked about this, right? We said in this essay, what we are going to do is to summarize both materials, but making sure that we contrast them, asegurándonos de que los estamos contrastando. So by including this connector, sin embargo, nonetheless, we are indicating the reviewer that we are going to start contrasting the reading passages, the reading passage with the listening passage, okay? So always include this connector. As I say, you have to copy this, basically, just as it is, and then to rellenar the rest of the essay with the information you have. So nonetheless, in the lecture, by the way, lecture, you know what it is, right? The class, in the lecture, it is said that, and here, look at how I apply it. Nonetheless, in the lecture, it is said that, and here I continue with, as I say, the very concise and general summary of what the listening passage said about Claudius. In the lecture, it is said that this optimistic understanding of Claudius' authority and deeds is actually inaccurate. As you can see, this is my summary of the listening passage. Super concise, right? So after you finish this, dear Shirley, okay, that this is your introduction, basically, you have to include a transition phrase. Now, let me explain you what a transition phrase is. A transition phrase is basically a statement that helps you to indicate that you are ending with your introduction, and now you're going to move on to your body, right? What a transition does indicates people that we are finishing with something, and we're going to start with something new. So as you can see here, it says, I am going to proceed to expose both views now. Okay, this is a transition phrase. It's basically a manner in which you say, well, now I have finished with my introductions, and now I'm going to explain these positions further. Because if you pay attention to my essay, Shirley, when I wrote it, basically the body is exactly the same that we have done here in the introduction, but a little bit more specific and detailed. Because in this case, as I told you, the reading passage gives a lot of reasons why Claudius was a good emperor. But in our introduction, we just said that the reading passage argued Claudius was a good emperor, but we didn't give all the reasons, right, that the reading passage offered for holding that Claudius was a good emperor. But we are going to offer those reasons that the reading passage gave in the body. The body is exactly the same than the introduction, but as I say, a little bit more specific. We are going to detail what were those arguments that the reading passage gave in order to argue that, as I told you, that that Claudius was a good emperor, right? So you are here, as I say, adding a transition phrase. So I'm saying, I'm going to proceed to expose both views. You are saying, okay, I have finished with my introduction, and now I'm going to start with my body. Okay, so always include this sentence. I am going to proceed to expose both views now, or you can change maybe the words if you don't like them. You can say, I'm going to talk about these positions from now on, or you could say, now let us examine these views further, something like that. But always a transition that helps you to move from your introduction to your body, okay? And remember, at the end of a transition phrase, you always go with a semicolon. Look at this. Well, it's not a semicolon, it's a colon or 2 points. In English, it's called column, okay? Column, this is how you call this. So you always include a colon, okay, in this transition phrase, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to, as I told you, you're not going to be able to separate your introduction from your body. Is there any question there, Shirley, about how this works? Anything that I could clarify?
No, in the first paragraph, that's a slide presentation for the lecture, no? Yeah, that's like the presentation for topic in this lecture.
Yes. If you look at it in that manner, yes, it is a presentation like what you're going to be discussing, exactly. But anyways, as I say, you always explain, right? Okay, so the reading passage said, as you can see here in this case, that Claudius was not a terrible Roman emperor, but actually contributed with good things, and nonetheless always contrasting, right? The lecture said that he was actually a very, very, let's say, terrible emperor for the empire, etc. So yes, it's basically a presentation, as you said. But anyways, right from the beginning, we are explaining, right? What are these passages about? We're saying that the reading passage argues in favor of Claudius, and we are saying that the listening passage argues against Claudius. So we are making sure that right from the beginning, the reader understands what the topic is going to be. But yes, it's basically like a presentation. Any other question, dear Shirley?
No, that's okay.
Okay, fantastic. So now that we have seen this, let's move on to the body. Okay, so this will be the introduction for this topic. Now, how would the body be organized? Let me show you. As you can see, it says body. And the body basically is going to be, as I told you, a more specific summary of the reading passage and also of the listening passage. Look at it. It says, firstly, In the reading passage, it is explained that, right, as I told you, the reading passage basically says that Claudius was a good emperor, but it gives a lot of reasons why he was a good emperor, right? So in this body, we are going to be basically mentioning those reasons that the reading passage gave for saying that Claudius was a good emperor. And we are going to contrast those reasons with, let's say, with the objections. You know what is an objection, right? Una objeción con la contraparte, let's say, that the listening passage said against Claudius. We are always going to be contrasting. Let me show you. Firstly, in the reading passage, it is explained that. Let me show you how I use this. Firstly, in the reading passage, it is explained that Claudius was very innovative. That is to say, this is a connector, remember, right? That is to say, he came out with remarkable works and reforms to the Roman Empire. So as you can see, this is what the reading passage said, right, dear Shirley, that he was somebody who was innovative. That is to say, he came up with very remarkable works and reforms to the Roman Empire. This is what the reading passage said. If you read it again, this is exactly what the reading passage said, that Claudius was a good emperor because he was innovative. He brought a lot of reforms and works to the Roman Empire. So, as you can see, in my body, the first thing I do is to express that argument, that the reading passage says that that the reading passage says that we are basically that Claudius was basically a good emperor because he contributed with very innovative things to the Roman Empire. Okay, remember, I'm not giving my opinion here. I'm not saying if I agree with this or if I know this is wrong or right. No, I'm simply summarizing what they said. I don't pay attention to my opinion in this case. Now, when we finish this, look at the template. It says, nevertheless, in the listening presentation, it is noted that. And this is exactly what I'm going to copy here, and I'm going to contrast the reading passage with the listening passage. Look at it. Nevertheless, in the listening presentation, it is noted that the only reformation and creative modification Claudius postulated in the Roman Empire was treason, right? Namely, he was able to corrupt the Roman armies and to use them for his benefit. Notice that I continue making this contrast between the reading passage, right, with what the listening passage said. But in this case, I'm being more specific because in the introduction, I was super general. I just said that the reading passage said Claudius was a good emperor, and that the listening passage argued that Claudius was not actually a good emperor, but actually a terrible governor. But nonetheless, here I am expressing the reasons that both information sources give for holding those opinions. So in this first statement or this first lines, I'm saying in the reading passage, it is claimed that Claudius was a very innovative ruler for the Roman Empire because he brought reforms and remarkable laws to the Roman Empire. And I contrast that, lo contrasto, with what the listening passage said. Nevertheless, sin embargo, in the listening presentation, it is noted that the only reformation and creative modification Claudius postulated in the Roman Empire was treason. Namely, he was able to corrupt the Roman armies and to use them for his benefit. This is what the listening passage said, right, dear Shirley? So as you can see, I am simply expressing that. I am not giving my opinion. Is there any question about this paragraph on how to write it, dear Shirley?
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay, fantastic. So what are you going to do in your second paragraph of the body? Well, exactly the same, because remember, the reading passage did not give just one argument, right, for saying that Claudius was a good emperor. The reading passage gave 3 different arguments, okay? So you're going to be summarizing the 3 of them. Secondly, this is going to be the second argument the reading passage said, and you're going to contrast that, guess with what? With what the listening passage said as an objection for that. Look at it. It says, secondly, in the reading excerpt, by the way, excerpt is another word, right, for saying passage, as I told you. Secondly, in the reading excerpt, it is pointed out that, here we complement. Secondly, in the reading excerpt, it is pointed out that Claudius was a straight ruler and judge for his people, right? This was the second argument that the reading passage made, that he was a straight ruler and judge for his people. Further, look at, here I am simply complementing, still complementando, right? What the reading passage said with more information, not with my own information, by the way, with the same information that the reading passage gave, and just, again, summarizing a little bit more what the reading passage said. I'm not giving my opinion, nor I am adding anything. anything to the essay, okay? Simply what they gave. Further, he executed justice and collaboration to slaves and facilitated the acquirement of Roman citizenship. Why do I say this? Because this is what the reading passage said. I'm not inventing anything, nor I am adding anything. The only thing you do is, as I say, summarizing. Okay? Now look at this. The listening passage claims notwithstanding, right? Look at the template. And respecting it. The listening passage claims notwithstanding. By the way,
What mean no?
Oh yes,
What
I was about to
mean
say that.
Yeah. Now, what mean the notwithstanding?
Notwithstanding basically means sin embargo, right? The no, o sea, como
Okay.
the list, yes, the listening passage claims notwithstanding. El pasaje de escucha clama sin embargo. It's another way. I mean, there are thousands of ways to say sin embargo in English. So notwithstanding is just one of them. But as I say, simply copy this, memorize this structure. It's very important for you to memorize this, okay? Memorize this structure. And it's super easy to memorize it because you're gonna write a lot of practices. So you simply copy it. But it means, as you told, the listening passage claims notwithstanding, sin embargo, clama sin embargo. What does it claim? Let's see. The listening passage claims notwithstanding that Claudius was not indeed a just and righteous ruler. Look at it. It says, likewise, he is said to have loved violence and the elimination of indigenous weak populations. Look at it there, Shirley. This is exactly what the listening passage said, right? That he was somebody who loved violence and he wanted to eliminate indigenous populations of the Roman Empire. So what am I doing here? I am summarizing that. I'm not adding anything new. I'm not saying what I think about it. I'm simply summarizing. Remember, okay? So basically, it's exactly the same than the first passage. I'm simply summarizing what the reading passage said, and I make a contrast between that and what the listening passage said as well. So here, finally, and this is the last paragraph. And what are you going to do in your last paragraph? Well, the same, exactly the same. Doesn't change. As you can see here, we will not have a conclusion. We are not going to have a conclusion in this essay, dear Shirley. Everything you're going to do is to make an introduction and a body. So your body is going to end, well, how? Making summaries and contrasting, right? You're not going to include a summary here of the summary, like you're not going to include a conclusion, because what is a conclusion? If you think about it, many people like to do conclusions. They like to include conclusions in their essays in this part, but it is not actually positive, because what is a conclusion? Usually, a conclusion is basically a summary, right? But if this essay is a summary, if you make a conclusion, you're making a summary of the summary. So it doesn't make sense, right, to include a summary or a conclusion. The only thing you need to do in this case is to write a good introduction and to state your body clearly. And with that, you're going to receive a good score, okay? And I tell you this by experience because this is the template that I used when I took the exam, and I used it and I got a pretty well score. So it's not necessary to include a conclusion at any part. But in this point, we are not including it, okay? We're simply using introduction and body. So what are you going to do in your last paragraph? Well, let me show you. Finally, in the reading selection, it is stated that, right? So this is the last argument that the reading selection gave. So let's see what that argument was. In the reading selection, it is stated that Claudius was prompt to recognize the value of diversity in his kingdom. Namely, here I am complementing, notice, I'm not giving my opinion, I'm simply complementing the information that they gave. What the reading passage said, I am summarizing it here. Namely, he disposed many political charges to previously owned slaves and women, a practice not very common in those times, right? So this is what the reading passage said, right, dear Shirley, that he gave to previously owned slave opportunities to be part of the government, and he also allowed the participation of women in government. So as I am saying, it's simply something very, very summarizing. I'm not giving here my opinion, nothing of that sort. So let's see what continues in the paragraph, or in this case, in the structure. On the other hand, look at it. On the other hand, in the presentation, it is mentioned that, again, I'm making a contrast. Estoy haciendo un contraste. On the other hand, this is an opposition connector, right? We saw this. On the other hand, por otra parte, in the presentation, it is mentioned that his decisions were not appropriate and turned out to be harmful for the empire. The slaves he charged with power ended up being corrupt, and his wives were abominable. To top it off, this is a connector that means para colmo, right? To top it off, para colmo, his legacy brought us one of the worst rulers in human history, namely Nero. I don't know if you have heard about this historical character, usually Nero, Neron. He was well, allegedly was a terrible ruler that destroyed Rome just because of his fun, and that basically persecuted a lot of people, including Christians, in the first century after Christ. He was a terrible governor. So we are simply including that the reading passage, the listening passage said that his son Nero was chosen because of his decision as emperor of Rome. So that was a terrible decision, right? So of course, if he was able to choose a terrible emperor as Nero was, the listening passage is claiming that he was not a good ruler or emperor to the Roman Empire. But are we giving our opinion? No, at all. The only thing we are doing is to summarize. We are summarizing what the listening passage said, right? And this is the essay, as you can see, no more than that. Let's see how many words I wrote. If we highlight this, I wrote 288 words. Remember, dear student, that here you need to write down at least 150 words, okay? That is the minimum quantity of words that you are required to write down, 150, okay? If you write down more than that, fantastic, okay? That is good. So remember, at least 150, but if you write down more than that, of course, you're gonna receive a higher score, okay? So look at it. This is the essay. Is there any question there, Shirley, about how to write down the essay?
Yeah. No, why this structure we don't have the conclusion, or what is the light sentence?
Mm-hmm. The reason why we don't have a conclusion is because, as I was mentioning you, think about what a conclusion is. A conclusion is a summary, right? There's really a conclusion in any paper we write. It's a summary, right? We are saying, well, in conclusion, we have described the following, the following, the following. So we are making a summary. But think about this. Is this essay a summary? I mean, all this that we have wrote, is this a summary? It's a summary, right? So if we write down a conclusion, what would be doing? What would we be doing? That is the sentence. What would we be doing? ¿Qué estaríamos haciendo? We would be making a summary of the summary, right? Un resumen del resumen. So, I mean, is that necessary? No, it's not. Why? Because if you think about it, dear Shirley, if you include the same information that you have wrote previously, is when the person who is going to evaluate your essay reads it, do you think he's going to value it? Why should he? Because you're simply repeating, you're being repetitive. And remember that something very important in this particular essay is to write down a lot of words, right? Because as much words as you get, your qualification is going to be better. So maybe he's going to think, if you write down a conclusion, that the only reason why you're writing it and repeating the information you already mentioned is because you want to get a higher quantity of words. But then that is not actually good. As I say, what you should do, or what your emphasis should be, is to write down a very accurate summary, including all the information you managed to in the essay that has been presented to you in the information sources you received. So a conclusion would be, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the company as well, because we have constructed this with my superiors, is unnecessary. Of course, it's up to you. If you consider that there is something lacking here, you could easily write down a conclusion. You say, right, in conclusion, I have discussed that the reading passage said Claudius was a fantastic governor because of these reasons. And finally, that the listening passage said, notwithstanding, that the Emperor Claudius was a terrible governor for these reasons. But I repeat, would that be beneficial for you? I don't think so, because it will be just wasting your time, because you need to write down, as I say, a very accurate summary above that. And it will be repetitive. You're not adding anything new, so that the reviewer can say, okay, this is new, I'm going to evaluate it, right? Just simply repeat it. But is that fine? Does that respond to the question?
Yes, I respond the question. That's okay. Okay.
Fantastic. Okay. Any other clarification that I could make? Tell me.
No, that's fine. I think that's fine.
Okay, fantastic. So what are we going to do right now, dear Shu? You're going to receive your first homework, okay? Reminder, I told you, you're going to have some homeworks, but these are going to be super short homeworks. You're not going to have a lot of homework. So what is your first homework? Your first homework is going to be to write down an essay for me, and I want it for tomorrow, okay? But remember, you're just going to use 20 minutes to write down your essay, so it's not a long homework. So I'm going to give you right now a reading passage, okay? And I don't want you to read it right now, okay? Don't read it right now. You're going to read it later when you have free time. But what we're going to do before finalizing our class of today's opportunity is to listen to the passage or to the lecture on the same topic. Okay, this is going to be your reading passage, but don't read it now. Read it tomorrow or whenever you're going to make your homework. Have it here, okay? This is going to be the reading passage. What we are going to do right now, dear Shirley, with me, is to listen to the lecture, okay? So I want you to please get a piece of paper near you and write down your notes, okay? Because with these notes, you are going to be writing down your essay for me so that we can evaluate it and to see what we can correct tomorrow, okay? So let us listen to this. And with these notes, we're going to finish the class for you to write down your essay whenever you have free time. And tomorrow, we're going to correct it together to see what we can improve. And I'm going to give you some recommendations if you need. All right, is that fine? Is that understandable?
Okay.
Fantastic. So let us listen to this lecture then, and please take your notes, because with those notes, you're going to be writing down your essay, okay? Let's go.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
All right, so the essay that you all read last week, well, it's very likely that the author of that essay simply didn't like Stein's style. The reasons given in that text kind of point to the author's biases. Take the issue of punctuation for one. Anybody who says the punctuation or the lack of punctuation in Stein's writing doesn't serve a purpose, they clearly haven't read her essay titled Poetry and Grammar. Stein viewed punctuation as a crutch, as a tool that was simply unnecessary. And so, well, relying on a tool like that encouraged authors to write weaker sentences. This is a unique perspective that's worth considering, not something we can simply write off. Second, the idea that Stein took Cubism and approach to writing, applied those concepts to her writing, and that Cubism was somehow incompatible with language, that idea completely ignores the changes in poetry since Stein's day. There's been quite a lot of poetry that relies on the sounds of words and the images conjured by what seem like totally nonsensical phrases. Stein's work is of massive literary influence, as an early example of that. And as for Stein's relationships with other authors and artists, you only have to look at Hemingway's famous style to see a Stein's influence. The simple, common words, the repetition, a lot of what we think as Hemingway's came directly from Stein. She really changed the way people around her were working. It wasn't just a social connection.
Summarize the points made in the lecture you just heard, explaining how they cast doubt on points made in the reading.
So as I told you, this is the lecture, okay, on the topic that you're going to read later, okay? And what is that topic? The reading passage that I sent to your chat box, okay? So please, when you have free time, dear Shirley, make sure to read this reading passage. Please try to use a chronometer, okay, so that you can measure your time. Remember that in order to read the reading passage, you just have 3 minutes. So try to practice just as it's going to be in the exam, because if you give yourself more time, maybe you're going to get used to it, and on the day of the exam, you're going to come up with some troubles, because as I say, 3 minutes is the limit, okay? So always use a chronometer like this one, or in your cell phone, and chronometer your time, okay? 3 minutes for you to read the reading passage. And after you do that, we'll start writing down your essay. How much time do you have for writing down this essay? Remember, 20 minutes. I'm gonna write it here for you. Reading time. Reading time is just 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes. And writing time, it's just 20 minutes, okay? Fantastic. So please use a chronometer, measure time, and try to write down always within that frame, because if you write down more, as I say, you're not going to improve. You're going to improve by practicing more and forcing yourself to do it just in the times and the and the limitations that the test gives you. Okay, is that clear, dear Shirley, what you have to do?
Yeah, that's okay.
Fantastic. So please write it in a Word document, and tomorrow you're going to send it to me when we start the class, and we're going to be correcting it and writing one more if we need to, and of course giving some feedback. All right, dear Shirley?
Okay.
Fantastic. So we're going to stop the class here. Let me stop this. I'm going to take your assistance. Please, dear Shirley, help me with the traditional poll that we always fill, okay? And with that, look at your screen. And if you have any other questions, please tell me. Let's see. Sorry. There you are. Very good. So thank you very much for your responses. And as I said, dear Shirley, I'm going to see you tomorrow. All right. Try to come with your essay already written so that we can correct it and to see if we can maybe modify something. Maybe you are going to notice that you need to improve a little bit in your typing. Maybe you don't meet the minimum requirements. Remember, I'm going to write down that to your chat box. Minimum words. Okay. Minimum quantity of words. How much? 150. Okay. Just in case you want to measure how many words you need to write. All right. Fantastic. Any question, dear Shirley?
No, that's okay. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. So I see you tomorrow and have a wonderful night. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
See you later.